Hello everyone, my name is Christina Kara. I'm a multimedia artist, curator and educator, and today we are going to start our second module with the topic graphic design, Canva and Creative Suite. So what is graphic design and why do we need it? Every day we're swimming in the ocean of visual information. Graphic design organizes graphic symbols, layouts and typography in a streamlined visual communication which carries not only factual data but also emotions and feelings. It may sound complicated, however, principles behind graphic design are common to other visual disciplines, and whether you are interested in illustration, photography, moving image, or even theater and performance, you will find yourself familiar with some of them. Let's look at the design basics. Some of those are specific to graphic design only, such as typography and iconography. However, we are not going to go into details about all of them. We're going to focus on a few of them, such as lines, shapes, color, contrast, and space. So let's start with our first design element, which is lines. There are visible and invisible lines in a design, but regardless of that, both of them are here to guide our eyes, to set the direction, to give a movement and rhythm to your design work. Let's look at the example. As we can see, there is a few sets of different lines. In the background, there are few vertical lines which create an active composition and make our eyes slide from the top to the bottom of the design. And on the first plane, of course, we can see thick curvy lines which create a focal point with a knot in the middle of the poster. The next design element is shape. Shape creates focus and structure. They also help to balance various elements within the canvas. As we can see in this design, which is inspired by the concept of spark, the middle oval encapsulates information and immediately draws our attention to it, whether it's text or a photography. Color and contrast not always go together, but they're a very successful couple, and I'm going to explain to you why. So first of all, color. Use of color in a design is a little bit tricky, and you need to be careful to do not use too many colors in one design. Or when you use color, you need to always think about the mood and meaning behind it. So the easiest and the safest way to use color in your design is for accents, as this is where principles of a contrast are coming in. Of course, you can create contrast not only with the color itself, but also with the weight and with a different texture, with a different scale of your objects and variety of them, etc., etc. Let's look at how it works in this poster. There is basically a clash of two different systems. In the background, we can see black and white, strict, grid-based structure, which gives us only basic information with the name and the kind of the festival. But on the first plane, we can see this flowy, colorful, vibrant shapes which are floating around the space, and it immediately changes the mood of the poster. It gives the atmosphere of the festival, people and opportunities. And the last but not least, my favorite design element is space. Why space is so important is because it holds everything together. You put all of your design element inside the canvas, so space frames it. It is important to remember that there is not only positive but a negative space, and they are equally important in your work. Let's look at this example. Negative space, it is something which gives stage for this beautiful flow of the ink. So let's jump into the tools. We're going to start with Canva, and for beginners, I suggest to start with the templates, but not in the way you may just thought. I do not suggest that you just pick a template and swap existing information with the one you had. On the contrary, I think the template is something which you can learn from. So how to do that? As you already know, when you start any creative process, you need to do your preparation, you need to do mood boards, you need to do research. So when you start in designing something, you already have some ideas in mind about what colors you are going for, what kind of mood you need to carry on, what is the shape of your design, etc., etc. So start looking through a variety of templates, and I suggest you to pick 2 or 3 of them and ask yourself, what do you like about them? What works in them? Maybe it's successful pairing of 2 different fonts. Maybe it's the way they used color, or the way everything holds on in a structure. So you need to identify those elements and try to reapply them in a new design. So basically, you kind of mix and match from a different templates rather than just using one. How does it look? I'll make this example only for this class. So this is a speculative project. I made this prompt with the ChatGPT. As you can see, I started with a mood board, which is my research, where I was thinking about the inspiration for this event, which is Pop-Up Winter Sale, and I'm designing a poster for it. So I picked my colors, learned about shape, structures, etc., which can be useful in my work. Another important thing, I also asked myself and tried to imagine me as an audience for this poster. What do I like about vintage sales and concept stores, and what kind of visual information can catch my attention if I saw this poster? As you can see, I picked 2 templates, and they are kind of have a similar feeling, but not quite here, of course, because they're designed for different events. So I like the structure, I liked the way they kind of sort of randomly, freely place the graphic elements around it. I like the shapes and combination of the colors. So some of those elements I started carrying on in a new template. I played around with shapes. And another important tip, whenever you start in your new design, it is very important that you put all of the mandatory information on a canvas as soon as possible. In my case, I only had text which must be present on a poster, but in your case, it also can be a logo of the brand you're working with, some of their brand guidelines, maybe photos they gave you together with the brief, which must be included. So you put all of them first, and then you start organizing your space, deciding what elements are more important and what can be given a less space and less accent in your design, etc. So in other words, making a graphic design, it's just making order out of chaos. And as we start in talking about order and layout and structure, how do you make them if you are not using a template? What to do if you need to design from scratch? In this case, I suggest you to start with design grids. You can learn more about them, and you can find a lot of the templates of design grids which you can apply for a variety of the designs. However, there are embedded instruments inside Canva and Creative Suite where you can just make grid tied to your design and use it for your project, whatever the case is. So grid gives you a framework which you can rely on to make sure that all the elements have enough space, that there is correct alignment of all of them, that the gutter is preserved and there is a margins around the edges, etc., etc. It's a very useful tool, especially when you're just beginning designing graphic works. Another thing you need to think about when creating a structure of your poster is hierarchy. Hierarchy is basically the order in which information need to be read. So from the most important ones to the least important ones. And of course you can achieve it by adjusting the scales of your element, placing correct accents, and maybe even discarding redundant information if there is no need of having it all in one place. What to do if you not only want to work with the structure and layouts, but you want to go farther. You want to start making your own graphic elements. You want to have more texture, more effects, custom effects for your work. And this is where you should start acquiring yourself to the Creative Suite. I introduce you in the first place to a very powerful tool, which is Adobe Photoshop. Basically, there is no limit in what you can achieve with this software. You can create designs of a various complexity and fantasy as far as your hardware allows it. When you're working with professional software, you always need to keep in mind that your machine is strong enough and that you have enough space, because they are quite heavy on scratch disk information. And another tool I'm introducing you to is Adobe Illustrator. It is gonna be of a special use for you if you are in love with typography, if you want to design logos, do branding, visuals, or you are interested in UX and UI. Because Adobe Illustrator allows you to work with vector graphics, which are infinitely scalable, so you never lose the quality and always have a crisp edge. If you're looking for analog to work in a bigger team, I suggest you to test out Figma or Sketch. And the last but not least, I introduce you to Adobe InDesign, which allows you to prepare very complex designs for publishing, such as magazine, catalogs, zines, brochures, and sometimes even heavy presentations with slides, which include a lot of custom-made graphic elements made in other software along the Creative Suite family, because it immediately allows to see changes in one software and update it in a already set layout inside the InDesign. Basically, it can give you control to set your work ready for print. It has all the information you need about saving margins, print marks, and even do color grading. And basically, this is your blitzkrieg into the graphic design. So I hope this information was useful to you, and as always, I'm looking forward to see your homework. This time I suggest that you try to make poster by yourself, either using Canva with template as for beginner, or if you want a challenge, to try out and make poster from scratch using a design grid. Thank you so much for listening, and see you next time.